Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. My name is Julius Walczynski. I am the Marketing Automation Specialist here at Safe Fleet Seon, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. Today's topic is how to use video to create a driver recognition program, and we have a great webinar ready for you. So today we will start with some key general ideas for making a driver performance and feedback program effective. Then we will talk about the specific role that video can play in improving a program. We will talk about how much money a good program can save your agency. We'll take a brief commercial break to talk a little bit about ourselves, and then we will have the Q&A. The presentation will take about 45 minutes. We should have about 15 minutes left for the Q&A. But if there's questions left on a board at the bottom of the hour, then we'll say overtime. So I understand if some of you have to leave, you have another meeting in an hour, but we don't, we can stay a little bit longer to answer all your questions. To ask your questions, please use the GoToWebinar questions panel. You will see it on your little control panel there. Click the little down arrow next to questions and just type your question in there. We will answer most of the questions at the very end, but feel free to type them in anytime you want. We might jump in and answer one or two questions during the broadcast as well. So on a line with me are two of my colleagues and a special guest. We have Michael Jackson on the line. Michael Jackson is the Executive Director of Southern Nevada Transit Coalition. He oversees 85 employees and 7.2 million annual operating revenues. He is also the state delegate to the Community Transportation Association of America, and he has a long and great working relationship with the State of Nevada Transportation Department, as well as the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada. Hi, Mike.
How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you very much again for joining us here. And also on the line with me is my colleague Scott Greenwald, who works with transit agencies to increase safety, reduce risk, and improve efficiency in the western states, specifically Arizona, California, Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada. Hi, Scott.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hi. And performing a similar role in the Northeast is John. Hi, John.
Hey, Julius. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Hello there. Yeah, John Robb, I think you said you're in Pennsylvania right now, getting quite a bit of snow.
A little bit of snow. It's on its way tomorrow, about a half a foot. So winter's not over yet.
Yeah. We're up here now. We're kind of used to it, but we're definitely following the news of what's happening to our neighbors in the south and the unusual weather they're getting there. Wow. All right. So let's talk about the challenges that we've heard, and we know that some of you are facing with driver evaluation. I think the biggest challenge that we hear about is the driver programs being a little bit too reactive rather than proactive. Is that the impression that you're getting from what you see and hear out in the field, John?
It is, Julius. From the customers that I talk to that have an actual program or a training program for their drivers, a lot of the times it is reactive. Where some customers are proactive, and I think the ones that are proactive, they see much better results out of their programs, the positive results, right? Your second point here about programs are they painful rather than positive? The person that's responsible for conducting these programs and reviewing things with their drivers, do they want to be doing it? Are drivers excited to come in and talk about different things that are happening on the road? So I find a huge difference between the customers that take that positive, proactive approach to this type of program and training and evaluation versus the contrary of being reactive and perhaps a negative or painful process. So it's just something to keep in mind as we go through this webinar, that we're going to be talking about a lot of different aspects that can go into programs like this. And it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind to all of the attendees here. Is with your specific program, is it proactive? Is it positive? Is it effective? Is there information or data that is missing that can make it more effective, not only for the agency, but for the drivers as well. And Mike, I know you wanted to allude just a little bit. I know you're going to dive into it a little bit later, but I know you wanted to allude to some of your experience with the reactive versus proactive approach to a program like this.
Oh, absolutely. When we had developed our video observation program and we were going after it to lower insurance costs, we went after it a little bit reactive and more so painful rather than positive. And after implementing the program, we had to quickly make some changes and turn it into an incentive for the drivers. And I'll speak about that a little bit more later.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah,
Thanks,
perfect.
John. So why use video to give drivers feedback? And we're just setting up the problem. We'll definitely go into bigger depth on these two topics in just a couple of minutes. But these are the challenges that we see, and part of the solution might be using a video. Scott, what are your thoughts here?
You see a couple of visuals here on this slide, and on the top visual, you're seeing, folks just sort of almost doing whatever they want to do, just playing almost anything they want to play, whereas the bottom picture shows more of a cadence and more structure to how they're performing. And so what I want to talk about is the Hawthorne effect, which is a scientific study done way back in the 20s and 30s with the Hawthorne Works, which was a GE manufacturing plant at the time. But they studied productivity and how to improve productivity and efficiency and communication. And they were very interested in how to get folks on the same page and rowing the same direction and improving overall camaraderie and et cetera, et cetera. And what they found out through those studies is that people do change behavior when they know they're being watched. And when you set up certain expectations for them and you tell them what those expectations are, they buy into those expectations, and everyone's trying to hit those same expectations, right? The bottom picture, the same note at the same time, exactly, very precise, stepping at the very same time. If you've all agreed on a set of standards, and everyone is now doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then the follow-up to that is that you are inspecting what you're expecting, right? And so that is the Hawthorne effect, is you're setting expectations and then you're following up, reviewing what you expected, using video or using human observation. But lots of agencies have, an ongoing review of drivers, with supervisors in the vehicles, for example. But, people do change behavior when they know they're being watched. So if you put a supervisor on the vehicle, they may change their behavior during that visit from the supervisor, but they may not change their behavior all the time. So part of what we're going to talk about is using video to use in your program so that you are setting expectations and then following up with those expectations. So what this does is it just reduces a bunch of complaints from customers, and it improves driver morale overall. I mean, Mike has instituted something in his agency. I don't think it was smooth in the beginning, but it's much better now, Mike. And you'll talk to this much later, but you're a testimony to how this can be done and how it can pay for itself and improve driver morale.
Oh, absolutely. And the Hawthorne effect is so true. When prior to implementing our program, the video was only pulled in a reactive manner. It was for incidents, accidents, customer complaints, issues like that. And we viewed the video prior to implementation, and we pulled some video randomly, and you can see the different actions that the drivers were taking. That wasn't all that impelling. I mean, it wasn't what I was hoping for. So we ended up having a drivers meeting prior to implementation to let all the drivers know that this is going into effect, to give them an opportunity to know that they are being watched. And it worked. And I'll talk about that more later as well.
Thank you. All right, we have just a quick housekeeping question from Nicole. Will the slides be made available after this webinar? Yes, Nicole, and everybody who attends and everybody who registers and no-shows will also get an email probably tomorrow with a link to the recording of this webinar. Okay. So ideas for a driver performance program. So over the next few slides, we will talk about driver performance in general, but we would like to start with a quick little poll. I'm going to launch the poll here. Give me just a second. There we go. So how would you describe your driver performance and recognition program? Select one. Is it ad hoc and reactive, structured and proactive, or is it just simply non-existent? And we'll give everybody a few seconds to submit their response here. We're kind of guessing that a lot of people will select ad hoc and reactive, which is probably the reason why there's so many of you on this webinar, hoping to get a few ideas how to make it more structured and proactive. But let's see if we can get a confirmation of that. All right. Wow. 62% of you voted. So let's give it just a couple more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Let's close this poll and let's share. All right. So we can see that 60% of you have an ad hoc and reactive driver performance and recognition program. Only 11% of you feel you have good structure and are being proactive. And for those 11% of you, please feel free to share what you're doing via the chat or via the questions. We can read that out as well. And 30% of you have selected non-existent. I guess that's a little surprising. I didn't think so many transit agencies wouldn't have anything at all. Any thoughts on the results there, Scott, John?
Yeah, what I would say is, they may have answered non-existent if they're not recognizing driver performance or a driver recognition program. They may be pulling video, in a reactive manner when an incident happens, but it may not be any kind of a recognition or performance piece to it.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you everybody for participating in that poll. We'll have one more poll in a few slides, but now let's keep going. So you should see the next slide now that talks about the importance of staying positive. And Mr. Positive, Scott, we'll talk about that.
Well, yeah. So the reality is that we know that just from accidents, right? The number of accidents and the number of complaints that agencies have versus the number of contacts that they have with the public, that drivers do a great job a vast majority of the time, right? I mean, it's not like, drivers are out there just, running over tricycles constantly. So, when you're creating your program, make sure it starts out as a reward program, not a new safety check. And so as you're introducing it to the drivers and your other departments in your agency, if you don't have one at all, or if you're manipulating your existing, this really should be a time to motivate and be a positive force within the agency to recognize what someone is already doing well. And so, if you become proactive by setting up a video review program, your expectations start getting met, and things start to fall into place. So you're not as negative in your communication because your agency is running smoother. So if you start out with a positive attitude, you may come across a bump in the road or a driver that has an issue, but that's going to be the exception. By far, it will be the exception. I think, Mike, you can speak to this at great length, and you will be. But my big point here is if you're going to do this, it may potentially be perceived as another way for management to be looking in on drivers. And this is not what we're talking about today. We're not trying to sell you a new piece of equipment. We're not trying to sell you a DVR or a video camera or something else. You theoretically have everything you need. Mike does not have fancy equipment in his agency. He's got a DVR and cameras, and he pulls hard drives to get his work done. So this does not require some whiz bang piece of equipment. Every agency that is on this phone call probably has everything they need, minus the will and the time that you need to divert from whatever you're doing now to a program that will really help drivers in the long run. I mean, Mike has seen dividends in so many ways. So my big takeaway on this is absolutely start out positive and keep it positive. Mike may not have started out as positive, but it is positive now. So Mike, you're going to get into that later, but tell them about your initial experience, maybe.
Oh yeah, I mean, right off the bat when we implemented it, there was morale issues right off the bat. They're wondering why are we watching them? They're doing their job, and the morale started to drop. We were afraid we had some turnover because there was some video that we saw that we had to take action on, and it served its purpose. But then the good drivers and all of that stayed aboard, it was affecting the morale. So we found out that in our grant, an eligible expense is safety incentive, and so we implemented a safety incentive into it, and that quickly turned it around. Money talks.
Yeah, very true.
All right. Thank you for that.
And then the next slide, Julius, I call it, as you go to the next slide,
okay, yep.
I call it the rewards and randomness slide. And what I mean by this is it's really important that, as I said earlier, that drivers don't know when they're going to be watched, right? The theory of randomness is critical in this program, that you're telling drivers, and that we're going to have this protocol where, and Mike does it a very specific way, and he'll talk about it, but you can say that each month you're going to pull video, you're going to decide to pull 30 minutes of video at a random time throughout that month across all drivers, right? You can pick 2 or 3 times throughout the day, and at the first of the month you say, okay, on the 17th and the 12th and the 21st, we're going to pull video from 9 to 9:30 a.m., from 2 to 2:30, right? And just pick 5 times throughout the day so you can hit all drivers if you wanted to do it that way, so that drivers don't know when they're going to be observed. And the intent of this is to tell drivers, look, we know you're doing things right all along. We're not trying, this isn't a gotcha. We're not trying to catch you doing something wrong. We are trying to reward you for doing what you're already doing right. So Mike, I mean, you work with each one of these bullet points in a very unique way. And I know that you're going to talk about it, but is there one takeaway that you would have out of this slide?
I think the biggest bullet point on this is the random video. The random part of it, we all have our drug and alcohol program, and we all have random polls for the drug and alcohol program, and that's big. And I think that's a strong way that it does keep our employees clean. And by doing the random video poll, it has the same effect. With the drivers knowing that at any time their video can be polled, they tend to behave better. And I think that's the biggest bullet point out of all of these bullet points on this slide.
Thanks, Mike. I'm curious about that fourth bullet there. So, how do you discuss results with drivers? Do you like give them a heads up a few days in advance that says, oh, we have video of you that we wanted to talk to you about, or how does that process look like?
We have driver safety meetings monthly at each one of our sites, and we announce the winner of the video observation, and then the others that are polled, well, all that are polled, we personally sit down with them and go over their results and their scores and what have you.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's like a celebratory event. You name your best driver for the month, and then on the side you also have your one-on-ones.
Yeah, and they tend to joke about it when they see the other drivers coming into the office.
Okay. Cool. All right. So, Scott, talk a little bit about why drivers learn to love video surveillance eventually.
Like if you've been in transit long enough, you probably remember when video was first arrived, that the agencies and the drivers wanted on vehicles for vindication after accusation now, right? That's where it's gone is, at first there was real trepidation about being watched and, what are you looking for and why are you putting video? And the reality is, things happen in public transportation. People on rainy, cold days, people will slip on that floor and they will bang their knee. They will come onto the bus with a bad attitude, and how come the driver was 10 seconds late, and how come he can't be on time, and so things happen, and drivers get accused of all sorts of things, and it's not necessarily their fault all the time. And I'll just very quickly go over this. And Mike had an incident where he had a driver that was on the freeway and a flash flood came and water rose to the passengers' feet, right? It got into the bus, and they were very nervous, and they were thinking that something could have been done from the driver. Well, reviewing the video, it was a flash flood. There was nothing the driver could have done. So in that situation, and they were looking for attorneys, right? These were plaintiffs accusing the agency and specifically the driver of negligence. And so video, after it was pulled and actually it was underwater, and Mike got it to work, but regardless, the video clearly showed that the driver couldn't have done anything different. So there was no negligence involved. But the accusations still happen to drivers. So, in a defensive posture, a driver really wants video. We're suggesting in this webinar that you take an offensive posture with it, that you become proactive and you make it a positive thing for drivers as opposed to always being defensive.
Thank you, Scott. Mike, so we've teased you a little bit, and thank you for answering our questions so far. But over the next couple of slides, why don't you tell us a little bit about Southern Nevada Transit Coalition here, and then on the next slide about the driver performance program that you have.
Okay. Yeah, I'm from Southern Nevada Transit Coalition. We handle all the rural transportation in Southern Nevada. We're a 501(c)(3). We work in partnership with the RTC and Nevada Department of Transportation. We're a grantee of 5311, and 5339 funds. We started out in 2002 and been doing very well since, and just keep on rolling and just working a good partnership with the RTC and NDOT. We're a small system, but we try to operate as professional as we possibly can. I'm originally from Orange County Transit, as well as the transit in Las Vegas, which was Citizen Area Transit back in the days. So we're doing good.
And your driver performance program there, yeah, just tell us a story. We so far that we heard on this webinar that it started a little bit rough, and you have to kind of restart it. So maybe start there. Tell us what was a rough start, what were the lessons learned, and how and why you're doing so well right now.
Oh, the situation all started, and we use the video as most everyone does, and that's in the reactive way, and we pulled it for different situations. And I started looking at what we can do to improve, and what we can do to save on insurance. Our insurance rates were going up, and our accidents weren't terrible, but they weren't where I would want. And I felt that we had ways that we can improve. So I started looking at our skills assessments, and I don't know how everybody else does it, but drivers are skilled assessed, and they're skilled assessed with a supervisor riding around with them. And I felt that was rather weak, because of course the driver is going to drive great with a supervisor riding around with them. So I started looking at what we could do with the video. And so we went ahead and, I got with the HR department, ops department, safety department, and started looking at this and seeing that there's a way that we could utilize this video. And like I said earlier, the random drug test has always been successful in a sense in keeping people clean. And I felt that doing this in a random way would do well. And at the time, I really didn't look at any incentives. I was just looking at basically providing a safer transit system. And so we had implemented it. And like I said earlier, I viewed some video randomly, and I wasn't real pleased with what I saw. So I definitely gave all the drivers a fair warning that this program is going to be implemented, and handed it out and went over it and explained how it's going to work. And the observation was set up to view not just negative but positive as well, because you want to reward them on the positive. You want to give them the extra credit that they deserve. Unfortunately, with the score sheet that we came up with, there tends to be more negative things that you're looking at than positive, but that's just the way it is. If someone can find another way to do it, that's great. But our observation sheet is pretty thorough, and it catches a lot of areas. 3 months into the program, I've seen that we did need to make a change, and so that's when I did a little research and found that we can be reimbursed for a safety incentive. And so we quickly implemented into the program an incentive, and basically at that time we changed the score sheet up a bit, included a scoring so that we could go ahead and be able to pick a winner out of the group that we randomly picked. And that helped a great deal. Throughout the years of this program, to me, any program that you have, it always needs revisions. And I think it keeps people on their toes. It keeps it crisp. It keeps it good. And so I'm constantly doing revisions to this program, and I've done revisions throughout the years with it. And currently, I had to break the score sheets up to the types of service, because you can't use a score sheet that covers all the services very well. Paratransit has different things that they do that's not the same as fixed route. And so I kind of grouped that together, and I actually grouped the sites together, and that kind of even added a little bit of a competitive edge to where they're not only competing with their coworkers at the site that they're at, but they're competing against the drivers at other sites as well. And it really, really helped the program. As we started rolling along, within months, we actually started to see just a reduction in customer complaints. We were seeing a reduction, of course, in accidents, and it's continued. There was a little bit of a turnover in the very beginning. We expected that, not drastic or anything, but there was a few drivers that did not stay with us. And then and I think we'll talk a little bit more on cost, but I think that's a biggie. We did have to hire, because I was going to have our operations supervisor do the viewing, but that was going to put quite a load on them. So we ended up hiring a person to do solely video reviews, and it's paid for itself. It's paid for itself in many, many ways. If you think about all the time spent on customer complaints, all the time spent on responding to incidents, responding to accidents, that money saved there alone in the labor that you're spending on that pays for the individual, not to mention the savings in insurance. There was a reduction in both preventable and non-preventable, which was kind of surprising with me, because the preventable, of course, you would expect that, but the non-preventable, I can't even explain that. I mean, I guess just because the drivers are practicing safer driving, that they're not involved in the non-preventables as much. In fact, we have not had a vehicle versus vehicle accident in years. And knock on wood, I can only credit the program that we have in place. I think that's pretty much what I have on it. I'm definitely willing to share what information I have. I think that we're going to send an email out after the webinar, and my contact information will be on that email. So feel free to ask, because I don't believe that anyone should have to recreate the wheel, and I'll share any information that I possibly can.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, in fact, there already was a question. Are you willing to send me a copy of the driver performance form? Yes, Dominique, we will. What you see here is just a cropped screenshot. There's actually, I think, 2 or 3 pages of this, so there's many more questions on there, and we will send you a link where you can download it as well. Yeah, we have a comment here from Steve. Where you were talking about unpreventable accidents. Steve says, that ties into safety, where the belief is there is no such thing as unpreventable. That's,
I totally agree with that. And that's one of the things that I've always preached as well, that, you know, there should actually be 3 ways of scoring an accident or investigating an accident, because there is most all non-preventables are preventable.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple questions from 2 different Tims here. So Tim number 1, will the link go out to all participants? Yes, tomorrow or Friday at the latest, you will get an email with a link to the recording and to the score sheet as well. And a question from another Tim, when you say reimbursed for a safety incentive, do you mean reimbursed from your 5311 grant?
Yes, it's a reimbursable, eligible, FTA eligible expense.
Excellent. All right, we have a few other questions here. I'm so glad that that these last couple of slides have spurred everybody's curiosity, but we will leave them till the Q&A, and now we will move on to the next section, which is how to leverage your current video equipment to give drivers feedback. And once again, we will have a short little poll. Give me a minute to launch it here. Okay. What is stopping you from using video to give feedback? So for the next few slides, we just talked about driver performance in general, and we can definitely keep talking about it during the Q&A and take questions on that. But for the next few minutes, we will concentrate on the role of video specifically in evaluating your driver. So we'd like to know what's stopping you, if it is stopping you, from using video to give feedback. Is it a lack of technology and equipment, lack of time or resources? Maybe you just don't know where to start. Perhaps there are some labor agency rules and regulations that are an obstacle, or maybe you are using video to give feedback. And more than half of you voted here. We'll give you just a few more seconds. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Close, and let me share this. Okay, so here are the results. So the winner is, with 44%, is you are using video to give feedback. So like we mentioned at the beginning, most agencies, probably almost all agencies right now, do have video and recording equipment on their buses, and they are using it for feedback. 29% of you find agency rules and regulations to be an obstacle. 17% of you don't know where to start, and 13% each say that lack of technology. Oh shoot! I'm sorry, guys. I see I screwed up the poll a little bit. The first one says lack of technology equipment. The second one also says lack of technology equipment, and that should have been a lack of time and resources. So my apologies for I must have copy and pasted something incorrectly there. The second one should have been lack of time and resources. So if that was your answer, perhaps you could just add it in the chat or the question, and we can talk about that a little bit. But yeah. There are the results on this, unfortunately, slightly flawed poll. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for participating there. Give me a moment here. And we'll move on to the next slide. All right, John, how to include video in driver feedback? What are your thoughts on this?
Perfect. Yes. So kind of speaking to, the 13% that potentially have lack of equipment or technology, looks like a good chunk, 44%, if I'm correct, are using video. Maybe this is specific to the 17% that don't know how to start, using video with respect to driver feedback. But at the end of the day, we're doing this webinar to educate everybody here on how to use video and just show some ways that how we can help, and hopefully how people can learn from Mike's example. But at the end of the day, we have to keep it positive. I think Mike's entire story about how they started and now where they are, with losing drivers and some reactive and negative, feedback in the beginning when the program started, and then how it evolved to being a very positive, rewarding, Mike, to steal some of your words, competitive edge, drivers joking about being recognized, right? Creating those better relationships, that better rapport amongst drivers in the agency, right? All of those things add up over time and just create a better workplace, for people to go to every day. We obviously know these drivers spend a ton of time behind the wheel, week to week, month to month. So where something like this, where if it's kept positive, if video is reviewed often and regularly to educate drivers and really show them, what's being done well to build on that positive experience, that in and of itself gets to where Mike is right now, where vehicle versus vehicle accident, they haven't had one in years. And it's fantastic. And because you said, it's a direct result of this program and the work that you and your colleagues have done to implement it. So it's really remarkable. And And but it's something to to use video, use it effectively, keep it positive, do it often, do it regularly, and we're going to talk in a minute here on how we can help to make it easy on yourself with an automatic process, to just make it that much easier. So Joyce, I think we're going to talk about a couple things to look for in a video, right?
We will on the next slide, but I'll just quickly throw in one question from the audience here. You were talking.
Sure.
The bullet says review video with drivers regularly, and one question from Ellie here is, I guess, pretty much asking how regularly. Ellie is asking, how many times in a year does a given driver sit down for a review in your program, Mike?
In my program?
Mm-hmm.
In our program, being it's random, it tends to vary. We still do our skills assessment. That is a requirement, and we still do our skills assessment, but the video observation is random. So therefore, you could have one person that could get pulled, 5 times during the year, another person get pulled 7, and we do that every month. Like I said earlier, you always have to revise your programs to keep them crisp and keep the interest. I've just recently started a video observation program during the probationary period of a new driver, and that the video would be pulled twice during their first 80 days so we can properly evaluate the driver and make sure that they make it through probation. So I mean, there's other ways of utilizing the video for observation other than in an incentive program as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Okay, let's go on to the next slide featuring a picture of the other Michael Jackson. So Scott, 5 things to look for on video.
Yeah, in no particular order here. These are things that we would rank as among the higher importance if you're going to be putting a program together. Mike's has got, I don't know, what are you up to, like 60, not 60, various sections. But these are some of the areas that we think are the most important. And one of the things that we're not suggesting is that the on time is just so important that it's causing more accidents, right? Because I think each agency can attest to, if you're just looking at on-time performance, that other things can go awry. So, Mike, I know that you have ranked yours in terms of importance in a point system on your sheet, and some of these rank higher than others, not necessarily in a point system, but in terms of how you're going to coach a driver when you see something going wrong.
Yeah, I've always preached in my drivers' meetings the big 3 priorities. And what I've always preached in order was the number 1 priority is safety. The number 2 priority is customer service. And the number 3 priority is on-time performance. And it really does seem, because back in the days, we used to post our on-time performance. We used to really push that because that was a goal that we would set. And it stressed the drivers out. It seemed to create an unsafe environment. And so when we backed off of that and we changed up and went to this big 3, the on-time performance improved. So it's something that I just kind of preach, and it's gone well.
Yeah, and the other point that I'd make is that Mike is making his particular sheet available to the folks on this call, but John or I are also available to discuss with agencies what we see and how we can help your agency craft a program, because as we said in slides previously, this is not just the operations team involved in this. Human resources needs to be involved. Maintenance is affected because, if you have better drivers, your vehicles are going to last longer. So there's a lot of disciplines at stake here.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Mike. Now, like we mentioned before, the video part of it for the video part of the driver recognition program can be done with equipment that most of you almost certainly already have. Just basic cameras and DVRs. Mike has been pulling DVRs manually, and he made this program work. But there are things that can make things a little bit easier on you. So perhaps you're here on a webinar. You already have a performance program in place. You already have video. Perhaps you're looking for something a little bit more next level, next step. So the next couple of slides, we will get John to talk a little bit about our software, specifically the Commander video and evidence management software. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thanks, Julius. So I think, Scott brings up a good point about many people being involved with a program like this, right? You need operations, you need HR, you need maintenance, you need a lot of different people to be involved. And at the end of the day, I mentioned a couple minutes ago that we're here to help. As Scott said, please reach out to us and we can help you speak about a program like this. But I just want to spend a couple minutes, that won't take long, to just address another way that we can help fleet operations specifically. I know my customers up here in the Northeast, and I think Scott will agree, and you could probably attest to this firsthand, that people who work in transit typically wear a lot of hats, a lot of responsibility, a very busy workload, and day-to-day things that they do, that it just doesn't leave a lot of time for other things. So there may be some people out here, right now on this call that are saying, well, I don't have the time to do this. So I just wanted to quickly go over our web-based video management software called Commander, and a way that you can easily get video from your vehicles via Wi-Fi. These videos that we've been talking about to help with programs like this, that we're talking about, looking at video regularly, at random, and often, those that are not using a system like this are doing it manually, as Mike can attest to. You're actually going out to the bus and physically pulling a hard drive and downloading a video, whereas this system is a way to help you automate that process, where you can sit behind your computer at the office, at home, and request a video from a bus, and that video will be downloaded via Wi-Fi from the bus, just making the process easier to be able to download these videos regularly, do it at random. You can do it automatically. You can schedule downloads. The possibilities are really endless when it comes to this system. So there's many more features, but I really just want to focus on the fact that automatic and scheduled downloads are a possibility with some of the equipment that the folks on this call are already using. With that being said, Julius, if you jump to the next slide, a feature that is within this system is what I call geofencing, or GPS loaded in here, showing a map and showing the trail locations of a bus or buses within the fleet. Say something happens and you do want to purposely look at a video, for a specific bus or a specific driver, or you want to look at a specific intersection, you can use this system to actually draw a map around an intersection or a specific area, and automatically download or schedule a download from that area, just to be able to help, again, fleet operations when it comes to using video for a case like this. So, Julius, I think the next slide here actually has a screenshot of what that would look like. So say, we want to achieve video from an intersection in this highlighted area. If you're in the Commander system here, Commander software, and you're actually going to draw a box around the intersection. Say it's this, Veterans Memorial Museum that we see here on the screen. Say, we want to just randomly pull a video from that intersection as a bus is going down that road. We can do it per intersection, based on the map, per time, per bus, per day. The possibilities are really endless. So at the end of the day, I really just want to stress the fact that the ability to make it easy on yourselves to achieve it, to get this video and and use it for your driver recognition program, it can be made easy through a system like this. So we're here to help, ask any questions, and we're always happy to talk to you about that.
All right, thanks, John. Okay, we're almost at nearing to the end here. Before we get into the Q&A, let's talk a little bit about ROI. So, Mike, just to you, maybe you can tell us exactly what you did, what you presented to the to your insurance company to save, and how much you saved thanks to this program.
Yeah, one of the things that like I said earlier, first priority of going after this observation was to lower our insurance cost. And at the time, our insurance cost was at $1.6 million. The highest cost that we have of anything. And I'm sure that's probably that way with a lot of others. And what I do with our broker is I tend to build a little packet of all of our programs and procedures and certificates that we may have gotten through the year, and just everything that we possibly can come up with, and supply that to our broker to put out there to these insurance companies to show them that we have the professionalism and we do look at everything possibly we can to be safe and hopefully lower our insurance. Well, when we implemented this observation plan, it dropped our insurance actually more than $600,000. I was only giving credit to the observation $600,000, but it dropped it down to $800,000 shortly after implementation. Of course, it took a little time to get what we have, a loss report from the insurance company, and that kind of follows you for a little while. And now our loss report is stellar, and we've still been able to maintain a low insurance rate comparable to what we had it lowered years ago. And everything always goes up in cost, but we've been able to maintain a very good cost on insurance since then. But I think the key is to keep track of all your new programs or new procedures and anything related to safety and certificates, and supply that to your broker or your insurance company to show that you're doing your part. And it really does help on lowering your insurance cost. And then, like I said earlier, you spend a lot of time on customer comments and incidents and accidents, and the less that you have, the less manpower you put out on that stuff as well.
Excellent. That's so impressive. 50%, 800,000 from 1.6 million saving on your insurance. Yeah, that is really amazing. All right. Scott and John, I will ask you to power through these really quickly so we can get to the Q&A, because we do have some questions that I would like to answer before the bottom of the hour. We will stay over time when we get more questions, but let's try to get to the Q&A as quickly as possible here.
This pie chart is informative in that it tells our clients, in the one section that they're in transit, on that top right, there's a small piece of the pie that you're in today, safely has operations in lots of vertical markets. And that's important because the synergy and the information and technology that we get from the other vertical markets transcends into the transit market. So we are getting technology that's benefiting our customers in transit that comes from, for example, police. So we have a lot of employees all over the country, including British Columbia, and throughout the United States. And I've said before that this is the first company I've worked for that have more engineers than I think any other functional group. So I'm very proud to work for this company because there's just a lot of great technology that comes out of it.
Thank you. And speaking of technology, John, perhaps you can tell everybody what technology, which of our technologies they might see on buses.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll echo Scott's comment there. Just, you know, incredibly thankful and proud to work for this company, and just having come from a small business advisory firm in my previous life, I'm always looking to help my clients, my customers, and you know, I really enjoy doing that. So, and I know that's what we're trying to do as a company. So, but I will say just briefly that this is a visual that I often use when I'm speaking to customers. You know, I'm a visual learner, and I think a lot of people, you know, think that we, although we are, and we do spend a lot of time and engineering resources on that, we do a whole lot more. This is a visual I often refer to as the bumper to bumper or one-stop shop, if you will, for safety. You know, customers, there's customers out there that I go and visit, and they might not be a video customer, but they might be a customer because they have our escape hatches or our mirrors, our lights, you know, our sensors or different safety technology solutions that we engineer and sell, and they don't even realize that they're a customer because of those products. So just because of the companies that we own and that we work with. So, you know, odds are if there's a safety need or a technology need out there, we probably have it. And, you know, I encourage everybody to, you know, reach out to myself, Scott, or one of our other colleagues to ask questions. And if we don't, I'm sure we know somebody and we can point you in the right direction. So, proud to be here. I just wanted to thank everybody, you know, for joining. And, you know, it's been great. So, go ahead, Julius, on to, I think, a summary of some of our customers.
Some of our clients. This is just to show a kind of a cross section of our clients. We serve you know, everyone from the biggest agencies on the continent to little ones with a handful of buses. All right. We have just a couple of minutes left. Like I said, we will stay over for overtime for Q&A. And we did answer some questions already. Perhaps that's why we're running up against the clock here. But for those of you who have to leave at the bottom of the hour sharp, I will present this slide right now. If you want to reach out to us later, there is John's email address, there is Scott's email address, there's our general transit at Safely email address, and Mike has been good enough that he provided his email here as well. So if you want to reach out to him specifically about his program in Southern Nevada, you can do that too. So for those of you who have to leave, hurry up and type your questions in right now. Even if we don't get to your question before you leave, you know, we will answer it for everybody else, and you can hear it on a recording. And now on to my favorite part of the webinar, because there's always lots of great questions, the Q&A. So let's start with a mix of questions. I'll put two questions into one here. One from Katie, one from Michael. So in talking about the driver performance, Katie is asking, is this all done through video surveillance? While Michael is asking, Mike, do you also still do supervisor onboard evaluations as well as video evaluations? So Mike, perhaps you can talk about the mix right now. Is it all video right now, or is kind of in-person evaluation still a part of the mix? And if so, how much?
Yeah, we still do the in-person. We've revamped our skills assessment sheet to be a little bit more detailed to make it more effective. But we do our driver's skills assessment is still done every 6 months. And then we do our random video observation monthly.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question for Mike here. I think most of the questions will be for you, Mike. About your video person, you said you hired somebody to review video. Um, another Mike is asking, is your video person junior position? Is he just looking at videos all day?
Yeah, he is, and we're fortunate in the area that we are. And the video observation, basically our corporate office is in Laughlin, and that's where the observation takes place. You know, all the downloading's done at the different sites and sent here to Laughlin. And we're fortunate that we have casinos, and casinos have security, and so we were able to basically nab up somebody that had experience in security and video observation, and that's purely what he does. Is he observes the whole shift of the driver when we pull that video. So if you could just imagine, you know, with 15 pulls and 15 pulls are 8 hours apiece, that time adds up, and we do not encourage him fast forwarding through.
Mm-hmm.
So it does take time.
Yeah. Do you see, you know, we've been talking about how you managed to
But I will say,
go ahead.
a little added to it. With the different other video polls that we end up having, such as incidents, customer complaints, he does assist in those areas as well.
I'm sorry, he does what?
He assists in those areas as well.
Oh, I see.
You know, you got the video observation, but you also have your other video polls for an incident or something like that, and he plays a role in that as well.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a couple questions here about the incentives. So Tim is asking, with shrinking budgets and COVID financial impacts, are there creative solutions for recognition other than monetary incentives during the pandemic? Gord is asking, what incentives do you provide? And George is asking, how big does the prize have to be a motivator? So, Mike, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about what the incentives are, what you find works, how big of an incentive does it have to be?
We started out at $50, and that had and it's a gift certificate. It's a Walmart card, and that $50 was well accepted. I mean, granted, $50 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it's an award. It's a safety award incentive, and that had a very good impact. What I ended up doing, because we had all our different sites separated and there was more gift cards being given out, I went ahead and combined some things and upped the ante, and then the safety incentive ended up going up to 100, and that really made a difference. But there is other ways, you know, and in fact, like I said before, you always have to make changes, and so now, you know, is there a parking spot that could be awarded to that driver every month? You know, there's other ways and other incentives that you could award a driver that isn't monetary. You know, it could be a driver. I mean, you could even give a person a day off. You know, there's many different ways. Mm-hmm. The main thing is we include in our grant application a budget for this. And if we were to get cut on our grant application, then we would have to look at where we would have to cut.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it was made clear earlier that Mike collects a certain percentage of his overall fleet each month, right? So if you have 50 drivers total, you know, you may only be pulling 5 drivers that month, 10% of your fleet each month, for example.
Mm-hmm. And then going back to the incentives, you know, I think just a recognition among colleagues at the workplace is quite a big incentive, right, Mike? Just, you know, knowing, being recognized as the driver of the month or the driver of the year. It's anybody who's worked any type of job knows that it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to be recognized for doing a good job publicly in front of everybody else.
Yeah, and we hand out a certificate as well. Mm-hmm. So they get a safety award certificate as well.
Excellent. Thank you. So Janet is asking more about the insurance costs and the savings. How much was the initial insurance costs, and was there insurance savings for Mike's program due to reduced accidents or the implementation of a driver safety program, driver monitoring program? So I think the answer is the latter, but perhaps you can expand on that a little bit, Mike.
It sounds like it's all,
Mm-hmm.
The initial increase, of course, we switched carriers, and the carrier that we ended up with, which we still are with, really took to our program. In fact, we gave them our program as well, and allowed them to share with some of their other clients, which weren't even in transit. I mean, video observation can be used anywhere. And so they really took to the program and recognized that. And I think that if it's recognized that you're doing everything that you possibly can, that you are being safe, and that you're being alert on every areas that you can, that there's a savings. Did the observation do it all? Well, I gave them a lot of information. We have a very, very good safety and security program as well. And we have all of our certs and everything necessary that the FTA requires. That does help. But the biggest game changer was that video observation. And then through the years to maintain that cost, because everything goes up, and I'm seeing that cost, our last insurance premium, I think, was somewhere around $879. And so it's still staying relatively stable. And I believe that that's because now the loss report and those things that follow you are dropping off, and the improvement is really being seen.
Thank you, Mike. So Janet, just as a high level to answer your question here, if I remember correctly, the initial insurance cost for Mike was 1.6 million, and he dropped it down to about 800,000. That's about accurate, right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. There's a few more questions for you here, but we'll give you a quick little break, and we'll let Scott and John answer a question or two. Patty is asking, is virtual training available for Safe Fleet products?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Can you expand on that a little bit, just so everybody knows?
Yeah, sure. John and I both do a ton of this, especially with COVID, right, where agencies have shut down and lots of people are working virtually. Is we'll set up a meeting just like this, a go-to meeting at a time convenient for the agency, and we can go over virtually anything the agency wants to talk about, right? We can talk about software or hardware. We can train them. We also have a lot of resources available on our community, and we should probably get that out in the email too, Julius. Thinking about it with this question, the Safe Fleet community is a web location where we house just a ton of documents on our existing products, as well as tutorials, videos on how to, tech support types of things. So we'll get that out. Julius, can we get that out in the same?
Scott, I think our community is mostly for customers, and we do have people on a webinar who aren't. So, certainly you can forward it to your customers here, but I probably will not include that on the general email.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry about that.
No problem. But yeah, just so people are aware, if you become a Safe Fleet customer, you will have access to training through various resources, whether it's on your own, researching your own manuals and videos on a community that Scott mentioned, or virtual, on the phone, whatever have you.
Hey, Julius, just to kind of echo what Scott said there, as he was talking, I was thinking over the course of the last, 9, 10, 11 months, I bet 95% of my meetings have been virtual. So just to try to put some context behind the question there, or behind our answer rather, that yeah, we can really discuss anything, via phone or computer. I know I have an office full of equipment, that I can happily share over video and share screens and whatnot. So back to the question, the answer is absolutely, and we're happy to do that. I speak for
Excellent.
as well. We're always happy to do that.
A question from Lucy that I guess is for me. How many screenshots from the movie Speed did you use in this presentation? Just two, Lucy. Here's the first one, the ROI one. There's the money isn't everything. Yeah, right. Ad on the back of Sandra Bullock's bus, and then here is the other one, and I think that's the movie director or something having a laugh with the actors.
Such a great question.
Yeah. Oh, I could have used so many more, but I didn't want to make this a theme here. Okay, let's get back to being a little bit more serious. Question for Mike. James is asking, if you have a driver that has repeated negative feedback, how do you address and help them correct the deficiencies?
This was another item that we had to implement as we go on, and so we had a tracking form that kind of tracked the repetitive negatives, and we weren't utilizing it very well. And so we just recently wiped the slate clean and implemented a retraining program. So when a driver has repetitive negatives in a certain area, that when we speak with them, we talk to them about the need for possible retraining. Let's say they're having difficulties restraining a scooter, and there's been several negative scores in that area, that we would go ahead and we developed a retraining program with different modules to cover these different areas. There's ADA, there's customer service, there's on-time performance, these different areas, and they'll go into a retraining module.
Thank you. And a related question from Patty. Do disciplinary action or remedial training occur during the random checks, for the random checks?
Yes, if there's something that's viewed, we don't wait for the safety meeting. If it's something serious, it's brought to my attention right away, and action is taken immediately on anything that may be bad.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something that is not that immediate, then there can be disciplinary done during the review of the observation, and then it kind of goes down from there. There's different ways that we handle it in our disciplinary process.
Thank you, Mike. Patty is asking, how do you have a certain program to choose your random list? Like, how do you randomize the selection there?
We do it in an old-fashioned way with cards.
Nice. Yeah.
And our HR department handles the random polls to keep it all fair, and they have an old-fashioned way with cards and how they pull it randomly, and it's worked very well.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, guys, we're almost at the end of questions. So if you have one that you really, really want to ask, now it's kind of your last chance to do it. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up soon. Tim is asking, what's the advantage of having numerical scoring system for video reviews versus using determinations like satisfactory, needs improvement, unsatisfactory?
There would be too many ties. We had to come up with a way that would, and even now there's times when it's very difficult and we've had ties, but in order to pick a winner, you got to be able to break it apart. And if you go with the satisfactory and all of that, you could end up having too many of the same results, and you're not able to pick a winner. So we went the score way to try to better pick the winner.
Excellent. Great answer. Janet, you know what? Janet has a fairly complex question here, multi-part question. So Janet is asking, maybe I should send that in an email to him. Please let me know. Yes, Janet, if you could do that. Mike's email is right at the bottom there. And so Mike, Janet will send you a question about your balance of full-time versus part-time drivers, total trips, operating hours, and so on. She's really curious about your operation here. That's great. Thank you, Janet.
Perfect.
Okay, and that's it. Those are all the questions. That is our entire presentation. Thank you, Mike especially, but thank you, Scott and John, also for staying overtime. Thank you to our audience. I see there's still so many of you on here. That's great to see, and to be reading your questions and seeing your poll results. On your way out, you will see a little 3-question survey. If you could answer those 3 multiple questions too, that'll give us some nice feedback for the webinar as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for this, and we will have another webinar probably in 2 or 3 months. So look for invitations to those later, and in the meantime, look for an email with a recording to this one later this week. Thanks all.
Thank you.